Yeah, so the successful picture that we are looking at is to be able to convince people, to sound confident, to be able to take feedback and criticism and solve it decisively and move on decisively without wasting too much energy. So why feedback hurts? A lot of us instinctively, unconsciously get affected by work feedback and criticism. But what is a deeper psychology? I have thought about it for a long time. So any perceived criticism have two components. One is identity, and second is safety. Especially in the workplace, safety is paramount. It's about your job performance or livelihood. But identity is a very interesting topic, a very interesting concept about identity. It's about how we are perceived as a person. And a lot of us are raised, especially in Asian context or in high performing family or culture, we think we are judged by our performance, by approval from other people about our work. So we don't have a layer in between people feedback on our work and our who we are. We think, okay, this feedback even from this random person, this random coworker can hurt us because any single piece of feedback on any single piece of work can invalidate our sense of our competency. Then sometimes, or we talk about fairness. Sometimes we feel that people misunderstand us. They don't understand the hardship, the constraint. Our boss don't understand the constraint that we have, you know. So identity is about fairness and competency, about our sense of self. Safety is, safety. But regardless of the reasons, um, long-term feedback, if we do not handle properly, you will notice. I mean, the worst case is we lash out, we quit, we quit the company, we lash out our coworker, our boss. That is the worst. But I think in most cases that I saw, people don't address it properly. So because I have worked with a lot, especially even people report to me, they would harbor resentment. I used to work in companies where, I mean, it's it's I could be say I could be proud that I could stay in certain company for much longer than my colleagues. Some of them, especially the younger generation, they can't handle pressure or feedback too well and they quit too early. Um, so it caused long-term resentment, poor jobs performance, poor satisfaction with your boss and your workplace. So the BBS framework is is what I have outlined to address these two components so that you can we can be more objective and detached. It's like a shield between crippling feedback anxiety and ourself, our identity. Because besides that, I think feedback and criticism and the trigger is the root cause of our long-term lack of confidence and anxiety. Because we have been hurt in the past. So now we every time we want to speak something in front of everyone, we are afraid. We are traumatized. I mean, it's a big word, traumatized, but I think that is a root. People don't suddenly become anxious or shy. If something happened to them. If everything is positive in the past, they would have be themselves, but that's not the case. So BBS stand for baseline expectations, biases, and strategic adjustment. You see what I have drawn now on the diagram on the paper as well. Feedback go through the first layer of fairness filter, which include baseline and constraint and biases. And then the second layer is strategic adjustment. So baseline and biases address the first component of identity. Is it fair? Is it about yourself? Should you be feeling guilty about it? You know? Strategic adjustment is about survival, about safety. It doesn't care about your feeling. Sometimes life is tough and you have to suck up your feeling to survive, do the job. So strategic adjustment take into account the reality. Who are you talking to? What kind of job is this? Whether it's not fair or not fair, you still have to do it well. I'm sure you can understand that. So let's start with baseline expectations. It is what are the reasonable standards and quality you are supposed to deliver in that particular task. Because it's very common, especially in younger professional or people who are a bit more introverted, that they are very perfectionistic. They would have an unreasonable expectation about how much they should perform and deliver. So there are a few tips or layers to establish a baseline, and you do need certain experiences to actually understand how much is expected of you when you do a presentation, when you perform a task, when you deliver a product. Certain things like how it has been done in the past by other people in the company. I think that is a very good way, a fast way to estimate how much work you need to put in. You don't need to be like super professional, as long as you can estimate based on past work, past projects that have been done by your bosses, by other worker in the same field. What are the constraints that the person who gives feedback is not aware of? You know, in any workplace environment, there are constraints in resources, in time, in priority. Not everything can be perfect because you are limited. So, and maybe you should voice it out to that person. It's a good practice to be assertive and outspoken. Like, okay, if your boss or coworker tell you, okay, this can be better or this is not fast enough, you can tell them, okay, is that the reason XYZ, or there are other tasks that might need higher priority. I think it's a good habit. And there is objective priority or objective matrix for us to measure how important a task is. I think you may have, I'm not sure if you have heard of this Eisenhower matrix. This is a very well-known time management task management tool where they divide tasks into 4 quadrants based on urgency and important, or like KPI, the impact of that task. So I think a lot of people miss out this because, yeah, if you treat everything as important, everything as firefighting, everything, in the end, you don't achieve anything. You will be burnt out at the end of the day because you have tons of requests from random people, random colleagues, random small tasks. So, not urgent. So, this is just one example of how you can objectively prioritize a task. I mean, you might have to take into account how your boss or how important stakeholder like to do measurement. But yeah, like if urgent, urgent, not important. Sorry, not urgent, not important, eliminate. Then not urgent but important, plan it. Then urgent and important, of course, you have to fight it now. The kind of thing. And it's really depend on the specific of your job, your company, for you to decide what is urgent and what is important. I can't really tell you that. Does that make sense? But this baseline expectation is, I think, is the most important thing that a lot of young professionals lack to safeguard against both personal perfectionism and as well as other people's unfair or biased expectation of you. With experience, we will know. With enough experience in the job, in your company, you will know what is reasonably expected of you. Any questions so far? Then with this baseline expectation, then we can do a modification with the 2 layers, other people's biases and strategic adjustment. Biases. So this have more to do with fairness, your identity. Is that person being fair? Is your boss being fair? How much should you take it personally? So I think there are a few layers of biases in other people that will help us to not take things personally. The most common one is job function. If people have worked in the same field, the same job for a long time, I'm sure you have noticed. Each department, each role has their own needs, their own biases. Sales, they are more fast-paced. They're more result-oriented. They're more driven for the result. They want actions. Accounting are more SOP, more standard operating procedure oriented, more detail oriented. They want accuracy. Engineering care more about products. Marketing care more about aesthetic, presentation, etc. And another important biases that I think is important is seniority. How long, how old is that person? How long has that person been? People tend to have this expert bias. Like if you have an older boss who have been in the job longer than you, sometimes they underestimate how much time or effort or experience you need to actually achieve the level of competency that he has. I think it's very common. So sometimes if you get feedback from a much more senior stakeholder that, okay, this not good enough or I can do it much better. Sometimes you have to take into account the fact that they might be underestimating how much effort he have taken to get there to that level, you know. Then besides work-related biases, there are two other layer of biases that you should consider as well. That is more long term. That is one is temporary and one is long term. Temporary means, and this is something that a lot of people miss out. Maybe sometimes it's just a bad day. People are not just worker, are not, they are also human being. Maybe they are stressed out. Maybe their children are sick. Maybe their family, their husband, their wife are not happy with them. We don't know, but it's always possible and it's definitely a fact of life. So if it's just a temporary thing, it's not a pattern against you. And you don't have to be too sweat too much about it, I think. A lot of time we do this projection, this catastrophic but projection that okay, if he said something rude to us, he must have some reason or some long term or some dislike toward us. But maybe a lot of times it's not the case if it's just a one-time thing. But then there are long-term patterns. This is more of the domain of maybe Victor is more quite familiar with is personality types and other more inherent human biases like ego defense or self-serving biases. When we talk about personality, long-term biases like personalities like people are introvert or extrovert. Introvert usually prefer depth. Extrovert, if your boss is extrovert, he prefer actions. If you are introvert, you consistently prefer depth, prefer careful thinking and analysis. Or we talk about feeling or thinking, some people are more naturally more logical, engineer are naturally more logical, and some people are more emotional. And if we talk about ego defense, self-serving biases, this is a bit deeper, but I'm sure if you notice, you will see it everywhere. And we ourselves are not immune to self-serving biases. Like all of us, we have a certain narrative about our identity, what we are proud of, you know. They have a certain story about why we are the hero of our story. I think it's very common. So if your boss or your stakeholder, they have a certain biases, like okay, they think they are super logical, they are super productive, or they are super result oriented, like very macho. Even if you think that objectively he's not that efficient or he's not that good, but it's sometimes it's in our benefit to not attack it directly, especially in the workplace. So the point is that if you work for a long time with some people, you will start to notice patterns that are more than their job. And this is something that you can keep in mind along. Yeah, Victor, I think you have a question or something? Or you just raising your hand?
Hold on. I actually have a question, but later on.
Yeah.
Oh, I can ask now.
Yeah.
What about constraints?
Constraints. You mean this part? Sorry.
Yeah, you mentioned constraints. There's a constraint part, right?
Yeah. I put
What
that
what is
under baseline expectations. So
any
whatever, sorry,
example of what constraint mean?
like sometimes I get feedback like I was in marketing. So there are times where I got me feedback about, okay, this website can, maybe I launch a website, a web page. And a lot of people say, oh, this, my boss or even some colleague will say, oh, this need this and this and this, or this can be, but then I said, okay, I already calculate inside my mind what is the priority, how much time or budget I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the expectations come with a constraint. Usually like time, budget, money, capability, all that is it. Okay. What are constraints the person may not be aware and okay.
Yeah, so I
Understand.
mean it's good for both your identity, your ego, your self-esteem. Like, okay, you know that, okay, this person is unfair. But at the same time, it might be good for you to list out and voice it up to that person. I think it's a good habit so that, because I know a lot of people, especially introverted people, they would expect people to read their mind, or can, like, their bosses can instinctively understand what they go through, like what they try so hard to achieve certain tasks or produce certain things. But I always tell them, okay, you need to voice out whatever constraints, whatever problem you have, so they understand. You can't expect people to read your mind, or because especially in bosses or higher up people, they manage hundred of people. They are not going to be aware of the specific constraints that you have, whether it's time, whether it's too many tasks. You have to say it. Does that
Okay.
make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, this, I guess this long-term pattern, especially about self-serving biases, is a bit deeper, and it might be more apparent or more clear in more like family setting, when you with your parents or spouses, your spouse or the children. You keep seeing them every day, and then you notice, okay, he has a certain ego, certain narrative about himself, you know. But at work, if you work long time enough, you know that, okay, your boss is proud of certain thing about himself, and he might be biased because this kind of bias and ego defense cause them to be not objective. If I think that I'm a very super logical person, super productive person, but that other people don't think the same way, but he want to protect it. So I mean, sometimes it have to be a bit more understanding about human inherent weaknesses. Even ourselves have that, and that will give us more better empathy and patience with other people. So we can be happier in the workplace. Last point, strategic adjustment, which have briefly covered just now when Victor shared. So yeah, while we do take care of the part about identity and understanding and empathy, sometimes we just need to get the work done. We need to smooth things out operationally. So I don't encourage working for too long in a toxic or unfair environment. It's bad for your mental health and everything. But some people might decide to endure certain places for very long because it gives good result, good incentive. But this one is diverse, but some strategies that I have observed that work very well for me. Prioritize of stakeholders. Feedback and requests from your immediate boss and your immediate stakeholders are the most important. Even sometimes if they are biased, if they have some certain trivial requests, I would prioritize it first. That is yeah, I think that is a common mistake, especially among maybe younger professional. They just prioritize everything. Then assess your personal capital and achievement capital with the person. Like Victor just now mentioned, he had a good relationship with his boss, so your boss shared the feedback directly with you. It shows that you have a good capital with him. Either whether it's personal or achievement capital, I'm not sure. But basically, you have a certain bank account with your boss, and then you can afford to, um, make mistake. Maybe that you know that okay, or you can be afford to be more upfront or be more of yourself if you have good relationship with a person, and assess the personality of the person, the pattern of the person. Now, if let's say you make a mistake in a presentation or a typo error on your website or your report, is your boss a detail-oriented person, or is he more of a big picture strategic person? A strategic boss might probably won't sweat too much about small mistake, small details. He might care more about what is your plan, what is your vision. But there are some bosses, the opposite, they might care about the details. So that is up to you to assess what are the patterns of that colleague or that or your boss, what he care about. But the whole point is that, it's about prioritize and assess the situation based on the importance of the person and the relationship and the strategic of your task. Any other strategy that you want to share? I think it's very situational. I mean, you really have to be in that situation to really assess how well you did it and what is the best course of action. Because a lot
Okay.
of people expect, okay, I have to be able to apply it immediately. Like, okay, if I think there might be good framework, but yeah, you need to burn it in as a habit. Uh, Maybe just spend maybe 2 minutes think about the scenario just now that you shared with me. So now think about the BBS framework, you know, imagine it, take a deep breath. How would you do it differently? So I can, and remember there were baseline expectations, biases that person have in terms of job, in terms of situation, personalities. Can you feel better empathy for that person? Can you have better clarity on that scenario? So that at least you don't get hijacked by the emotions anymore. Then after you understand the baseline, the biases, then you apply the strategic adjustment, you know. So the first B, baseline and constraints. Is it fair? Is it fair to you? Should you have to react? Should you be furious, indignant? That is baseline. The second B is about biases. Is there anything you don't understand? You may not have. You may have missed about that person, and strategic adjustment. So hopefully that in the next few times you practice this, maybe you practice at home on your own time first, a few times before you apply it in real time. The BBS framework, Don't let the emotion hijack you, and you have better empathy, and you have better strategies when someone gives you a feedback on your work or your presentation. Make sense? Any think that is the end. I think I already talked about that, that practice exercise. Yeah, apply it a few times virtually and then until you are ready to apply it in real time so that you can use it automatically and you have a pattern of being more calm and strategic in the workplace. Any questions?